Hello again. Welcome to another episode of the Uranium Market Minute. Today is Friday, March 4th, and this is episode number 87. My name is Justin Hune. I am your host. I'm the founder and publisher of the Uranium Insider Pro newsletter, the only investing newsletter that focuses solely on uranium and publishes on a regular monthly basis. Thank you again for tuning in. As always, nothing in this podcast is intended to be investing advice. I am not your financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. Please always do your own due diligence when it comes to investing, and always take responsibility for your own choices. All right, really do appreciate all of you being here. As always, of course, the elephant in the room, the incident last night at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine. I'm going to discuss this in depth in the mailbag section. Before we do that, as usual, we will run through the daily scoreboard, talk about the spot price and spot flows, ETF flows, look at the charts briefly, and then we'll get into the weeds of what happened last night at this nuclear power plant in Ukraine. So before we do that, spot price of uranium, $50.25 a pound, down about 50 cents from yesterday, seeing pretty decent action in the spot market today, as you might expect. I'm very pleased to see the spot price hold up. There's no reason why it shouldn't, and still ticking down slightly, but holding considerably well, and the bids rising throughout the day after the initial drop. Yesterday, SPUT raised $4.4 million in new capital, purchased another 300,000 pounds of uranium. Year to date, SPUT's purchases 8.3 million pounds of uranium, 441.1 million in capital raised through their ATM. Truly astonishing numbers for SPUT. SPUT traded slightly down on the day, but with the dip in the spot price, it's possible that they were close to that 1% premium to NAV at some point throughout the day. Either way, the trust traded extremely strongly today, which I will show you in the chart shortly. They're currently sitting on 75 million in cash. Figured they keep about a $30 million buffer in their coffers. So that's roughly enough to purchase around 1 million pounds, almost 1 million pounds from the spot market. They now sit on almost 50 million pounds, 49.6 million pounds of U3O8, and they have raised 1.45 billion in new capital since last August. Just an absolute powerhouse. Looking at the sector equity ETFs, URA again reporting a huge outstanding share issuance, 1.43 million new shares. URNM reporting an increase in 100,000 shares. That led to mandated buying of 32.2 million. Again, money continues to flow in to these ETFs. That is really good sign to see. Obviously, that gives us that flywheel effect when they purchase their underlying holdings, helps the sector to hold up and to rise when the volumes are high enough. Let's go ahead and take a look at the charts. Starting off with URA, gapping down on the open pretty substantially, although trading back up throughout the day to close at only a negative 3.96% on the day. Big volumes. I want to show you the 2 hour and kind of let you know what I think that we saw today. Massive volume on the 2 hour. The first 2 hours of trading today saw the largest trading volume in a 2 hour period for URA in its history. This was panic selling that happened on the open, and I think that that was primarily coming from retail, with probably smart money taking the shares out of their hands. And then we saw the volume start to dissipate throughout the day, and the trust trade up, the ETF trade up close to the high print on the day, printing somewhat of a hammer candle. Very encouraging trading action, all things considered, following the absolutely horrendous day in the Australian markets for uranium stocks that happened last evening. Looking at the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, very nice day. Traded barely down 1 penny on the day. Look at that rebound intraday, just unbelievable. Good, respectable volume here. Trading very well here, and this obviously was very good to see. I honestly was expecting a worse day in the markets for uranium today following the incident yesterday evening, and especially following the price action for the Aussie stocks. Let's take a look at one of the larger Australian uranium stocks, Paladin Energy. At one point was down 25% intraday yesterday. However, the dips did get bought relatively aggressively, still down 14% on the day. I expect, after seeing what happened in the markets today, barring any further negative news for the sector across the weekend, that we are likely to see the Aussie stocks recover substantially on Monday. And of course, that's something I would love to see. Cameco also printing a big hammer today, down just over 4% on reasonable volume, but those dips coming in, chart still holding up that well. interestingly enough, across the space, most of these equities did fill that gap that we saw from last week. So very good to see. Actually, that's from Monday, excuse me. Nice to see the recovery today. And honestly, I was expecting a far, far worse trading day in the markets today, based on the amount of fear that we were seeing and feeling in the markets and in across the Twitter sphere and across the news yesterday evening. So let's get into that. So yesterday at about 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern, we started to hear reports that there was fighting going on at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southeastern Ukraine, fighting between Ukrainians and the Russians, and that there was a fire that had broken out at the power plant. Zaporizhzhia is an absolutely massive power plant, 5,700 megawatts. It's the largest nuclear plant in Europe. It consists of 6 reactors, and it provides a whopping 25% of the electricity for the entire country of the Ukraine. So we actually saw there was so much misinformation that was spread last night, especially ignorance around nuclear plants, around the dangers of nuclear, around the safety mechanisms, etc. And I'll give you a number of examples of that. So at 4:30, let's see, 4:34 p.m. And this is Pacific time. This is coming from Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba. I apologize if I'm butchering these people's names. He says the Russian army is firing from all sides upon Zaporizhzhia, a nuclear power plant, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Fire has already broken out. If it blows up, it will be 10 times larger than Chernobyl. Russians must immediately cease the fire, allow firefighters, establish a security zone. All right, so this got the fear and it started spreading quickly. This particular tweet, almost 100,000 likes, 40,000 retweets, 50,000 retweets, excuse me. And this is coming from a Ukrainian official. Okay, so first of all, let's disseminate that language a little bit. If it blows up, all right. So nuclear power plants don't blow up. Okay, what happens when a reactor core ceases to be able to be cooled? It can melt down and the pressure can increase and it can release radiation. That is what happened in Fukushima. That was never a danger from last night. These reactors are sealed within massive containment. Okay, this is multiple meters thick of concrete and steel. These are built to withstand a 747 plowing into the side of them at 350 miles an hour. There's a gentleman that spoke often about nuclear last night, and I've been following him for quite a while. He's very, very sharp. His name is Mark Nelson. He's managing director of the Radiant Energy Fund. Very sharp about nuclear energy, and he was ever present last night on Twitter, and very grateful for his presence and his knowledge that he so willingly shared with all of us. He shared a tweet today showing a cask that is holding spent nuclear fuel being tested, and it literally is a missile being fired at this cask, and you'll see the missile essentially disintegrates and the cask is perfectly fine. All right, the radioactive elements of a nuclear power plant, not only are they they're highly sealed and highly protected by extremely thick containment fields, but there are also multiple redundant systems in place to keep these reactors from melting down. So that honestly was probably the largest threat last night, was some disruption to the cooling mechanism of these power plants. So what we found out throughout the evening after this initial fearful tweet, and by the way, those fearful tweets and news reports from every single mainstream media outlet continued to flow for about an hour and a half, 2 hours last night during the Australian markets when things were just crashing. So what did we find out? So out of the 6 reactors, 4 of them had already been shut down prior to this skirmish, probably due to just safety concerns with the war that was surrounding this area. Throughout the night, a 5th reactor was safely shut down, and the 6th reactor is now operating at 60% capacity still to provide electricity to keep the cooling systems intact and in place. What else did we find out? There was never any direct hit or any sort of military threat to the reactors themselves. The fire that broke out was in essentially an outbuilding, an administrative building that was like for a training facility, and that was actually, if you looked at the live stream video of this situation happening and then looked on Google Maps, which is what I did last night, you could clearly see that the fire was taking place at a great distance from the actual reactors, and the reactors from that perspective, anyways, of that live stream camera, we're perfectly fine. Of course, fire on the site of a nuclear power plant is not something that really gives you the warm and fuzzies. This is something that surely we were concerned about, and everyone was concerned about at the time. And so as the night went on, the fear continued. So then we see about a half an hour later, 5:09 p.m. Pacific, the Associated Press tweets out, a government official told the Associated Press that elevated levels of radiation were detected near the site of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which provides 25% of Ukraine's power generation. This is blatantly false, and it was blatantly false. Whether or not the AP knew it was false, or they were just reporting what somebody, the lie that somebody told them, we don't know, and we will never know. But that was blatantly false. How did we know that? There's real-time radiation data that you can look at for the country of Ukraine. That was shared on Twitter last night. I was watching it in real time. There's more radiation coming from the farmlands across the river from the power plant than from the power plant itself. This did not happen. This was a blatant lie, and it was spread by the AP. This was also then picked up by every other mainstream news outlet, and the fear continued to foment. We even had a tweet coming from the president of the Ukraine, basically saying, warning that this could be 10 times worse than Chernobyl. That the radiation event that could come from this could threaten the entire continent. So we had supposedly reputable sources actually fomenting fear and misinformation. And it really was a unique, kind of an amazing moment, really, in my journey for this particular investment. And my, connection with the Twitter investing community around nuclear and the nuclear community in general. It was really profound. We had people come together last night in a way that I haven't really seen. And during this supposed crisis, we had this really incredible Twitter Spaces event where Mark Nelson, that I just mentioned, along with dozens of other very sharp people involved some way or another with nuclear regulation, with nuclear engineering, et cetera, discussing the safety mechanisms of these power plants, discussing their interpretation of what they think is happening currently. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And it was essential. Now, for us at Uranium Insider, we sent out an email bulletin as soon as we felt we had accurate information. This was a couple of hours after this broke. We would have liked to send something out immediately, but we and everybody else did not really know what was happening at first. So we immediately jumped on it, got as much accurate information as we could, as fast as we could, and sent out that bulletin that I know, based on the feedback, was very helpful for people to understand what was going on, where we essentially said, most of these headlines that you're seeing around this event did not happen, are not happening, and here is what is actually happening. So what have we learned after last night? Currently, it appears that the Russians are in control of the power plant, yet there are a number of Ukrainian power plant workers still on site. The operations are happening, and as normal. Everything is safe. There is no radiation event. There's no threat to the actual reactors of the plant. The fire was put out a couple of hours after it was reported that it had started. The fighting died down. Nobody was actually killed. There were 2 people injured, so thank God about that. Either way, a very stressful, very scary scenario, but it also just reiterated the importance of due diligence and your own investigation of things. In this day and age, you simply cannot just believe what you're being told by single sources. You have to do your own due diligence with everything. These news outlets, I mean, whether or not they are intentionally spreading falsehoods, or they thrive and live on clicks and eyeballs and views and ad revenue, it's probably, in some cases it's one, in some cases it's the other. Most of the time, I think it's just fear is the biggest seller of news. And so you get these fearful headlines. It doesn't even matter if they're true or not. They could be completely false, which they were, and they still got picked up by every mainstream news outlet, spreading the fear around. Then you see massive panic selling. And of course, that probably was the ultimate buy the dip, because nothing else has changed about this. This is still an unbelievable setup for our investments, and we are still, totally long. We do have a bit of a cash position. We have a bit of a defensive position, but we also are still very long this sector. And last night was clearly disturbing at first, but it just shows you the importance of doing your own due diligence. The disclaimer at the top of these videos is not something I say just for legal protection. It's something that is actually really important. And with all of that said, this is a very, very volatile, very risky sector. You shouldn't be investing your entire investable net worth into one sector, even if you're diversified across that sector. That's not a smart thing to do. And perhaps what happened last night was a little bit of a wake-up call for some people. Maybe they're over invested. Maybe their position sizing is too large, that for this type of sell-off to happen, especially in Australian stocks. Obviously, it was far, far better across the American and the Canadian markets. And I would expect, like I mentioned, if nothing further negatively impacts this investment thesis across the weekend, the Aussies will probably recover quite well on Monday. But with that said, it's very risky. It's very volatile. But either way, I think that last night was a profound experience for a lot of reasons. Not only just kind of the Twitter, uranium Twitter coming together and helping to try to spread what was really happening and the truth about the safety mechanisms, the truth about what was happening at the reactor to the extent that we could understand what was happening and get accurate information. So in that, and also just the safety mechanism of nuclear. I mean, to me, this is like, okay, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe just withstood, military action. That's fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic. Not that this happened, but that the plant is fine. That really, in my opinion, is a testament to the resiliency of these designs. It's really profound, and I don't think this is going to change anything in terms of adoption of nuclear, in terms of current builds, et cetera, et cetera. All the reactors that are currently up and running, they still are burning through fuel. The demand is not going to change, and the supply risks are still there with this, just in generally speaking, but also with this conflict that's happening. So all of that is to say that it's terrible to see what's happening there. And it's not something, again, that I'm celebrating in any way, shape, or form. This is my own personal opinion on what happened with this particular plant and what could happen with other energy sources in general, not just the nukes, but other energy sources throughout Ukraine. Is that it seems to me that Russia was wanting to take control of the energy grid in Ukraine as part of a strategic move in this war. If you can control the power grid, you can control the people. It's a terrible prospect to even consider, shutting off the power grid for 25% of the country, if that's what they aim to do with this takeover of this plant. That absolutely, just kneecaps the country in a big, big way, and the people. It's absolutely terrible. But in my opinion, this was not an attack on the plant. Russia does not want to cause a radiation event. Ukraine clearly does not want that either. If Russia wanted to hit the plant, they'd hit the plant. If they wanted to drop a nuke, they drop a nuke. And God forbid either of those things happen. And I don't believe that they will. They don't want to radiate this country that's right on their border, that they are actively involved in taking over. So I think these tweets about and these reports about Russia's trying to destroy a nuclear power plant and cause Chernobyl Part 2 is just absolutely insane. Also, the references to Chernobyl are blatantly false. Chernobyl did not have a containment. The meltdown that happened to that reactor core easily dispersed into the atmosphere. And all of the modern reactors that are running around the globe have containment fields. Okay, so any reference to Chernobyl and comparison to Chernobyl is just an utter lie and an obvious sign that the person saying this does not understand the nuclear power plant designs that are modern and are currently being used in Ukraine and around the world. So all of that is to say, that was a very stressful evening. Fear is real. It's a very, very strong emotion, especially in the markets. If you don't know who you are, the markets are a very expensive way to find out. And last night and today is one of those moments. And so we're steadfast with this investment. We're still very bullish on the mid and long term. Of course, we hope that this war ends quickly. And of course, we hope that there never is any sort of nuclear accident, but it always is a small risk that's there. We understand that. Anybody invested in this space should understand that. That was never something we were concerned about last night. But obviously, the skirmish that did happen at that site was disturbing and did cause some fear, especially as it was vastly, vastly overstated by the news media and by social media and by elected officials in Ukraine. So with all of that said, I hope that you're well. I hope that maybe this weekend you spend some time off the screens and with family, with friends, take some deep breaths in the outdoors, and just take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, et cetera, et cetera. Investing is not everything. This war is clearly a disturbing thing that's happening, and we hope that it resolves quickly and with the least amount of pain and suffering as possible. All right. Thank you for listening. Do appreciate you all. Take care and be well, and we will see you next week. Cheers.